There is no charge, my son, when you add it all up. The full cost of real love is no charge. Good morning, happy Monday. It is April 12th, 2025. Welcome to Mornings with Morpha, where authenticity lives and thrives to create a space of growth, healing, and joy. I am your host, Andrea Lawful Sanders, and each day we will cover the topics that are informative and engaging while learning from each other. If you are looking for me on Instagram, I am now on my professional page, A.LawfulTruth underscore LLC. That is A.LawfulTruth underscore LLC. You will no longer see me on my personal page, so don't look for me there. There you go. Someone found me on A.LawfulTruth underscore LLC. Good morning to each and every one of you. So it is Monday. It's the day after Mother's Day. And so many people were out with their moms. I had the opportunity to, my husband and children, two of the five, took me to dinner yesterday. We had a great time. And while out there, I began noticing all the moms. I could tell the siblings, the children from the mothers, because they kind of look like each other. And we had a really good time. Good morning, Bobby Card. Thank you, honey. I had to be out this morning. You can tell when I'm not going to the gym, right? Stuff going on. So I had a really, really great time. The last baby, which is son number two for me, and our daughter, who was the eldest, came and we had dinner and we sat and we talked. And I have to tell you, it was so good. The best thing, and I guess I'm not speaking for every mother, but for this mother, the best thing I can do is see my family. So to be able to spend time with copy, paste, and repeat. The only one I didn't see this weekend was Mr. Professor, but I got to spend time with copy, paste, and repeat. All the sons called and wished me a happy Mother's Day. All of them, all four of them, and the our daughter. Drove up and came and had dinner with us. So it was a good time for me. I really enjoyed myself. And of course, Pastor Walter preached his face off. My youngest son was in church with me yesterday. And so folks looked at him and looked at me, and I said, yes, it's my child. I don't always have my children, they have their own lives. So I don't always have them with mine. Oh, thank you, Alexandra. She says, Royalty, you look so regal. Good morning. Good morning, Viola. I can't get clean, I get dressed up. I was telling the story. We were coming in from church yesterday. If you don't follow me on social media, then you won't know the story. But my son and I came in from church. I said, "You want to go to lunch?" He said, "No, we have plenty of food in the refrigerator. I'll just heat something up." So we parked on the outside. Good morning, Ask. And as we were coming in, we saw the new neighbor just moved in, and he was like, Hello, neighbor. I've been trying to find an opportunity to meet you." And I said, "Hi, how are you?" Tell him my name. He tells me his name, and he says, "So, do you live here with your parents?" I said, "No, I am the parent." And he squinted, and I said, 60. He screamed. I'm not quite 60, but I'm almost there. And he looked at my son and he says, grabbed my son's head and said, "Your mother is well preserved." We laughed so hard. We laughed for a good 20 minutes after that. And quite frankly, stress in life will take a toll on you. And for me, I'm feeling stressed. So I don't even know how the rest of you are doing it. But if you're constantly stressed, if you're constantly under pressure, if you're constantly feeling like everything is just not so good, it takes a toll on your skin, it takes a toll on your body. I drink water and I go to bed. I go to sleep. I saw some friends of mine in the restaurant where we were in Chestnut Hill, and they grabbed my husband. Morgan grabbed my husband and was like, "Dude, she talks about you all. That's a pleasure to meet you." And they were so excited to meet him. And we just look, it's a lot. It's a lot. We're all just trying to uh and yeah, listen, we could feel crazed about the craziness that's going on. We're canceling family reunions. We're canceling anything that happened for us to travel abroad. Everybody feels like it is too much right now. Too much. And as much as I want to rock on and act like nothing is going on, we're trying to live a normal life. I am, for the first summer in all the years that my husband and I've been together. We've been together for 15 years. We'll be married for 10 in another month. For the first time in 15 summers, I'm staying put. I literally am. I'm just like, because my husband is like, listen, if they snatch you for whatever the reason, for whatever they come up with, Everybody in this family is going to have a bird, a cow, a goat. We all gonna get locked up. I was crying. He's like, "You go, I go." My daughter was like, "I can't even imagine it, mother, mommy, mom." And my sons are like, "Yeah, we're not thinking about that. So you stay put." And so I'm doing things locally, so I can go to all the things that you would invite me to over the summer. And I kept saying, "I can't. I'll be over here. I can't. I'm flying over here. I can't. I'm flying there. I can't." I'm sitting still. So I'm looking forward to hanging out with Mr. Man Frisbee and his jam session. I'm looking forward to taking in a few concerts. I already saw Mary J. Blige. I'm looking forward to joining my husband and his family on a family reunion. A first one. Good morning, David. Marguerite says, "Good morning at a friend's home overnight, unable to log on." So you're over here with me. Good morning, Marguerite. Good morning, darling. I told my husband, I said, "There's this spa weekend coming up. Should I go?" I told him the price. He said, go ahead, just whatever it is that makes you happy. So all the money that I would go to take to go do this and go do that, he'll have some money in his pocket this summer. So I'm staying still. Maybe not, because I'm still doing a couple of things. So I got a little spa weekend coming up. Just really trying to figure out what, yes, just Zennia, safety first. And the way my family is and the way they feel about me, I just rather just some of us in the family talked about going to Portugal, talked about going to everybody was like, yeah, nah, we're just going to chill, we thought about taking a couple of train rides just to experience it, because I'm not on trains very often, or driving to different destinations. And even driving, we have to be mindful. So just it's there. I see that China has met with the United States, and they did a 90-day pause. They didn't say they canceled tariffs altogether. I want you to keep in mind that there is an election coming up on May 20th, and in other states it's different for other states. But I believe that there's some kind of metric at work here, because people are really trying to figure this thing out. So whatever you can do, however you can do. Saw the same brother that I saw in church the Sunday before last, and he said, I was telling my friends what you said to me. And they were like, "Really?" And he said, "We went online and everything you said was happening, was happening." He said, "We were just living our lives, just living our lives." So I'm telling people, do not hoard. Do not go out there and hoard. Nobody is hoarding. Just get a little bit extra of this. If you only would buy one things of toothpaste, get four, right? So that if something happens, you have a little bit of time. Don't go out there and buy 20 things of toothpaste. We're not asking you to hoard, and nobody's telling you to do that, because what you're going to do is create an issue for the other people who want food too, kind of like they did in the pandemic, when COVID happened. So be mindful. Renee, good morning. Renee, good morning. Wayne, good morning. Debbie, I see all of you over here. Good morning, Monica. And I agree, safety first. So there's been a spate of violent crimes in Philadelphia in the last couple of weeks at least. People are getting shot. A beloved rapper who only talked about positivity was shot, I guess it was yesterday. And so, what is going on? Children are being shot in their neighborhoods. It's just crazy. So, I pulled up the Philadelphia Police Department crime data. There are 74 homicides as of yesterday. It's minus 21% from last year, right? Then uh, they've had 4,435 total violent crimes so far this year. And that's minus 1% year to date. We've had total property crimes, 22,293 property crimes. So pay attention to what's going on around you. Let me see what's happening here. Hi, David.
Good morning.
Morning, my darling.
Good morning. How are you?
You know, today we're going to talk about local things, taxes.
Hi, local. Yes. Local. Happy Mother's Day to you.
Thank you, darling.
Yes, yes.
Thousand greetings. Listen, people that I don't even remember knew that I existed. Somebody, I gotta read. I have to read this to you. Where the hell is it? I cried. Lord,
Who
there've been
didn't know that
so
you
many.
existed?
There's so many. But when you love on people and you don't expect anything in return, it comes back to you. So somebody that I helped to raise years ago. He said, Happy Mother's Day to an anchor, nurturer, warrior, and healer. Today we honor not just the title of mother for you, but the spirit of motherhood, the strength it takes to carry generations on your back, the grace it takes to keep showing up with love, and the wisdom that flows through your every word and touch. May we never forget how powerful, divine, and irreplaceable you are. You are seen, you are loved, you are thanked.
Yeah.
Child.
You know, it's funny because Mother's Day is for me one of those times which I can reflect on all of the mothers, right? The whole community of mothers. My mother was a maverick and a hammer, um, and and there were times where she appeared soft, and times she appeared like a bulldozer, and so the community of mothers who raised me. Alongside my mother, the women who stepped in when I was in another country, or in my godmothers and my aunts, and the community, the church ladies, and all this. So Mother's Day becomes almost like an International Women's Day for me,
It
if you
does.
will.
It does,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah.
It does. It
And
does.
there are even some men who I include in Mother's Day because I feel
Yes.
like they mother people, or they mother situations, and so I
Or they've
I
had to
find it
take care of their children by themselves, so they get mother and
absolutely.
father thing.
Absolutely, and it's one of those peacock proud moments, as
Yes.
a reverend I particularly know of would say, because it's a Philadelphia-born moment, right? This is a holiday which started here, 1913, I believe, homegrown, which became recognized as an international holiday.
Mother's
Um,
Day
uh,
started in Philadelphia?
in Philadelphia, and if you want to go
Listen.
see the plaque for that, it's in front of City Hall, and it's a wonderful thing that we can own this city of brotherly love and sisterly affection,
Yes.
birthed this day of love in the world, and I think it's important that we focus on this day of love, this moment of love right now when there's a lot of lack of love, when
Yes.
there's a lack of empathy and
Mhm.
forethought and ideas
Lack
about
of
how to be
everything, David. It's insane. Wait, Marguerite says she's
humane.
so sad. Marguerite says she's so sad she can't see you. Your whole aura makes her smile.
Thank you. That is so sweet of you. And I know I have to behave when I'm out in the street because people be knowing this. Oh my goodness, I saw you in Philadelphia. Now I see you here in New York. I was in Paris. And I said, oh my God, it's you again. I said, oh.
You hang out with me, you'll get that a lot. My friend Denise can't go anywhere now.
Can't
You
go
talk
nowhere.
about crayon.
Not allowed. Not allowed to go anywhere. So, so I'm thankful that my mother raised me with P's and Q's and manners. I was cussing somebody else out yesterday about their lack of manners. Did you have a mother? And I guess it was Mother's Day.
Oh, David, the lack of
where's your
manners is
mother?
insane. Pastor Walter preached about it yesterday, and my son was sitting beside me cackling. He
Mm,
goes, Yeah,
mm.
you were the mother that was like, No, we're
A
not doing that.
stickler. Stickler. So much so that my mother now, she's going to kill me when she hears this. My mother now has a lack of manners that I find deplorable. And I cannot abide by the things which sometimes she chooses to
About the
do. And
very
so
thing that she taught you. She has to.
absolutely not. And so she calls, she says, well, how could you say that to me? Well, this is what you told me. And an apple in a tree that, raise a child up in the way it shall go and shall never depart from it. And I'm not departing from this track. So come on back and bring your butt back to where you were supposed to be. I don't know what this is, this newfound strength that you have, or new joy, or new wisdom, and this is not working. Don't do it. So
Mhm.
I laugh at that because my mother was the very glamorous corporate entity.
Mhm.
She was the glamourzoid in our family. I think people looked at her at this sort of glam. Every day there was a new piece of clothing or a
Yeah.
fabulous jewel or this and the other. But
Yeah.
she also had a tongue on her. She was Miranda Priestley. She really had that type of Devil Wears Prada kind of
Yeah.
atmosphere. And so
Did
there
you call
was
your
no,
mother Devil Wear Prada?
she was absolutely Miranda Priestley. My mother was Miranda Priestley, and what's the other woman? Oh my goodness! Oh,
Where that played
uh,
Glenn Close.
no, 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 no,
Mm-mm.
no. Carol DeVille was a whole other piece. Oh my goodness. Famous. Carol.
Marguerite, you gotta see
Dynasty.
him.
Dynasty.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. He is fabulous. The hair is just
Oh.
mm.
Dynasty. My mother was the mix of those two characters in the
Mm.
in the white furs and the
Diane
same
Carroll.
hairstyle.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Diane Carroll. But
Yes.
that yes, and Meryl Streep from Dover's Spot. Put them two women together. You have my mother. That was my mom, and And so nobody messed with my mom. Nobody, my cousins were afraid of her. They did something bad. They said, we call on Charlene. Oh, no, don't call on Charlene. But um, I learned how to carry myself and walk through the world and
Yes.
honor my dignity in every moment and dignity to others and to have a sort of air of self that is directly birthed of that line that she comes from
Mm-hmm.
and that wisdom that she carries and that
Mm-hmm.
way and that mannerism that she has. And so when I end up, as I did last week, flying to Paris to go meet a friend at the Ritz for dinner, and um, and I find myself in this room of princes having a conversation about a ball, I don't feel in any way, shape, or form um,
That you don't
moved.
belong, that you're not a part of. Right.
Not just that I don't belong. I feel that the steps at the carpet in the Ritz Carlton, I can tell them you need to replace because it wasn't for me. And I have this. I don't know where that comes from, but they're my mother. It's my
Who
mother.
who introduced you to the royalty? Because you are such a unicorn. When
Yeah,
and you're well read, you're
yeah.
well researched, right? You've told me things that made me go back and look and go, did and you're right,
I knew it
right?
happened.
So they taught you not just social graces and mannerisms and how to hang with king and queens and princesses and
Yeah.
princes. They've taught you to know your worth, to know the
So
value of research. Who taught you that?
absolutely. Well, so I was always wrong, you have to see. So when I was growing up, I was an only child, so that's the first thing. My cousin Jaws, who is like a sister to me,
Hmm.
lived out in Horsham for a time when she was going to school, and but I was the only child, so to speak. I was Carlton from the Fresh Prince, if you will, in that dynamic, and that whole story is a very family
Hmm.
story kind of thing,
Hmm.
um, and so every time I opened my mouth, I was corrected.
Ooh, so it
Each
moved you.
detail. I also was, I put up a video about this, it was rather funny on YouTube and on TikTok. I was forced to orate and to read news articles to the camera to present as a child. So that I'd be sat at a desk and I'd have to read the news and read a story and talk about it. And every day that was practice for public presentation. As a child, you have to understand it's very odd, right? Like, what is this about? But then you realize your family's story and their history. So my family came to America just before slavery, and as some of the earliest of the slaves as well. A woman called Fran was attached to a Jonathan Smith, who was a slave captain. She and John ended up having a child. That was called Suki. Suki and John's son, John Smith, who was a senator, ended up having the next set of children. And from there, they had Len Smith, and he had Eli Smith. Len Smith had a sister, and his sister was sent back to Liberia during the Monrovian period to resettle Liberia. And so that family ruled Liberia until the coup, in which they were shot and put out for all the sorts of reasons, and sent back to the United States. So the Patmore family, the Thomases and Paris, came back to the Devons, the Smiths, and the Highs. On the American side, the Devons, Smiths, and Highs, which had become light skinned, economic problem, right? Big thing for Black people. I don't know if Black people understand how racist Black people were to themselves. Were land granted because they were light. Some of them were passing, so that their slaved fathers, enslaving fathers, then freed them, gave them the land to rule, and they purchased not only their own family back, but also Irish indentured servants as slaves. And they owned the Irish people until the U.S. government said Irish people are white.
Black people owned Irish people until the US government said that Irish people are
This,
white.
that's
You know,
right.
and that's what distinguishes you. Let me tell you why. You've been entrenched in learning about your history in such a way
Forced.
that you are, well, be forced or not. Let
Yeah,
me
yeah.
tell you what it has done for you as an adult. It has allowed you now as an adult to walk through this earth with humility, but with grace and understanding who you are. So you never, ever, ever have to conscript yourself to try to fit into rooms. Never, ever have to. When you walk down the street, I remember seeing you for the first time, like, who the hell is that? And you walked up to me to the dinner in Blanc and you were like, oh my God, this outfit. And I was like, child, I've been watching you for a couple of years. And when Josh told me she was your cousin, I said, I
Yeah,
love him. It is
yeah,
that sense of knowing who you are so you never have to tell anybody who you are.
yeah,
You never have to say, do you know who I am? No, your whole aura tells people, right?
yeah.
And you
And you
never
have
have to
a
compromise yourself with
yeah,
folks
but
trying to
there's
fit in.
also a you're allowed to be silent. Silence is a privilege. silence is so a privilege. People say, why are black people so loud and so this and so that? Because they don't have the privilege of quiet, right? If they're silent, they're overlooked, overruled, overrun. And this new thing that we're doing of being quiet in a moment where there is upheaval is a privilege that we take. But I came from a family that, at least on one side of it, had the privilege of silence for a long time.
Yes.
And lived in a world that was not only silent and quiet, but unheard of and really unseen until people like Otis Graham began to write books about our kind of people and the
Yes.
black aristocracy in America and all this and the other. Now, that is also to say that I also came from an extraordinarily public-focused entertainment-like family on my father's side, right? My father's side was full of musicians and opera singers and people. My grandparents met on the stage of the Academy of Music, performing in an opera. And Leslie Spurlock Opera Company, which is a black opera
Mm-hmm.
company, right? You have to remember this is a time in history when black aristocracy lived on South Street. Before they were
Yes.
moved, right? Before they were plucked up and pushed away into North Philadelphia. We will talk about gentrification, and we're going to get to this conversation about gentrification, particularly in places like Fishtown, where now we see opioid epidemic and this and the other pushing people out, because this is not a story which is new. Philadelphia has pushed people using drugs for a very long time. One of those times is when they moved rich black people off of South Street and pushed them into North Philadelphia, having given them the homes and the land that used to belong to rich white people who flighted from the city into the suburbs now that we
Mm-hmm.
call, okay, so the main line, right? So this clash of both a Philadelphia-born working family who was extraordinarily talented and very brilliant and very bougie, a Jones Tabernacle people who spoke in a particular way. People say, why do you speak this way? And someone commented on it, and it was relief because I never want to say it, but it's true. There is this accent that comes from the black aristocracy, which is very round, because you're beaten into round. It's not now, it's no. Please drop your jaw when you
You
speak.
speak.
This is how it is, tied to the chair with a scarf so you can eat, so you can't reach too far to the table. But these things now, when I walk into a room, and you said you carry Nanny the Maroons with you every
I
time you walk
do.
into a room. And I carry Charles Hyde Debnam, and I carry Jonathan Smith, and I carry Sookie, and I carry John Jenkins, and I carry Mark Delano Jenkins as an opera singer and a performer. And I carry these people. I carry my mother as Miranda Priestley and as Carol Burnett into the room. And then I soften that with my father's sort of an inertia of quiet certainty that if I were to open my mouth and be wrong as a child, it was going to be hell to pay. So I should say nothing unless I am certain I am correct, and even then pray that God doesn't have a miracle that will show me I'm wrong, right? So that's kind of the way in which you're forced. And when you get to a certain place, you have this luxury of quietness where someone can say something, you can just look at them and say,
I did that yesterday in church.
yeah,
And at the end, they walked over and said, I'm so sorry.
all is well,
That's
all is
exactly
well.
what I did. See, you have to know how to move through this life without forcing your way through the water.
Yeah.
And it's a
And
very difficult thing.
once you know yourself, either that's something that you inherently have in you or something you've learned, you've
Hmm.
practiced, right? You've gained it, you've gained yourself. Most people are walking through life trying to gain themselves, and that's such an important thing. How do you gain yourself? But once you get there, everybody in the world is going to hate you. They're not going to understand why you are you. And so while they say, I love you and kiss you on the cheek, they're also extraordinarily annoyed.
Have you ever had anyone walk up to you and say this? When you walk into the room, everything stops. Can you just sit in the back so that they don't see you for a while? Have you ever had
I,
that happen to you?
I've had in various ways, people say to me, what if you changed your hair and wore it in a bun? That would be more acceptable to us today. Or what if you wore a traditional suit? I laugh. I remember the day a friend of mine came, two stories, the same friend. I was becoming a Mason. I am the 12th generation of Masons in my family, and the reason for that, which is really interesting for Black people, is because if you were a free man, in order to be a Mason, you had to be a freed person. It was another signal to those who would enslave you that you were not a slave and could not be enslaved. So it was very important for Black people of a certain means to become Masons, right? And to participate in the debutante cycles and this and the other, which gets to how I was
Hmm.
introduced to this world. But um, I was becoming a Mason, and so I had gone to join this lodge. I decided I was not going to join the Prince Hall Masons, where my uncle was sitting currently as the Grand Master in Philadelphia, but I was going to join the General Masons of the Pennsylvania Assembly in Philadelphia at the Grand Lodge. Why? Because I had felt like this separation of people based on color had become not just a tradition of choice, which it really is a tradition of choice because it's not legally, but I thought it needed to be stopped. I thought we needed to come to a place where we started unifying as lodges. So I joined a body of Masons which had for a time not allowed blacks to become Masons within it. Prince Hall had to go somewhere else. And in that, the person, my friend, said to me, ooh, you need to simplify your clothing. They're going to come for a visit because the Masons, the first thing they do is come to your home to
Mm.
visit you, to see, truthfully, are you of a certain standard? Do you live well enough? Do you have a home? Are your things refined? Are they well appointed as any other? And I knew this standard from family, family, family. David, they're gonna come, but please, just whatever you do, be normal. Come down a bit because you're too fancy.
Mm.
Right? The expectation of your skin is that you wouldn't be so fancy. So when they come there, and so they came to the house, and my mother had prepared a beautiful little buffet for them, and we they sat first in the music room, and then they moved to the dining room and had dinner, and then they asked questions in the solarium, and then we sent them off with a champagne toast. And he said to me, they don't want you to be a Mason, David. They don't have a reason why, but I told you you're too fancy now. In the rule of the Masons, we have what's called a black ball. When someone says, we don't want you, you can never become a Mason again. And immediately, St. John's Lodge 115, which is the first lodge in America, it's the lodge of Benjamin Franklin. It has been refurbished as 115, but before it was St. John's number one, called me, and I went to a meeting with them, and they said, the reason that you were blocked is completely unmasonic. We will not have it. We'd like you to be a Mason. I said, what was that reason? They said they couldn't understand a black family that lived like this. Something must be wrong. And now that lodge, which I won't give the name of it because it's a lovely group of body people and they have changed completely, wears black tie at lodge every evening and throws alongside of us balls and this and the other. And the person who told me I was too fancy now asks me where he can get his suits tailored
Yeah.
and where he can find his capes and dalmatics and where are the proper shoes for evening attire because they have become fancy. You see, so walking in and being told to sit in the back of the church or take your hat off or to be quiet in the back, it doesn't work. Unfortunately, the sun shines where I go. So if I sit in the back, you don't turn around. If I choose not to come, you're gonna get on the TV and find me.
Yeah.
And I say that without any arrogance because it's actually quite annoying. It's a burden, if you will, to know that when I walk out of my house, I can't choose to leave in pajamas
Yes.
because there will be a picture at some point.
Yeah.
Somebody will say hello. I can't sneak around.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, not only can I not do that, but I don't have an army like the British royal family to protect me. I don't live in the palace that's called Buckingham, and therefore you get all of the lack of privilege and none of the privilege that goes
Right.
along with some of that stuff. So when people start complaining about their privilege and their community work, I say, shut up.
Yeah.
Because there are people who walk around every day with a responsibility to the social world that doesn't come with a bunch of stuff.
Here, hold on,
Oh,
so stop for a second. Tria Jones asked a question. I
yes.
am wondering if it helps others with their family history and finding out information about them. Even better than that, Tria, when you know your family history and you walk truthfully in it.
Yeah.
My friend Denise would always say to me, your sons, they walk into the school, they walk through the school, they flow through the school. They're not in fights, they're not trying to be seen. You just see them walking down the hallway. That's because they know their heritage, they know where they come from. So I would ask all of you to learn about your heritage, wherever you come from, because it really speaks to, which is why David is the way he is. It's the way I am where I am. No
Mhm.
forcing, no fighting. The same couple that I saw yesterday was like, you belong in an upper echelon. I said, what are you talking about? I don't belong anywhere. I belong in no group. I literally am doing what I do to help people and serve people. And they said, but that's exactly why. You're not forcing yourself into rooms. If you're invited into certain rooms, you don't go. I am quite clear about, I'm not taking pictures with Monkey D. Mus. I come from a lineage quite like you, not the way you came from it, but my lineage is take care of those. take care of those.
I am
And
my
you
brother's
must,
keeper. That is the
yes,
rule.
make
Yes.
sure that everyone around you is okay. Do not ever turn your nose down at anyone. For because the privilege that you were born and raised with, which is having my parents, which is knowing my history, which is knowing where I come from, which is we go back this one with this one with this one and that, the quite like you did, right? The
Yeah.
McCullers and the
Yeah.
Campbells, and we go
Hmm.
all the way back and we
That's right.
understand who we are.
Who you are.
You don't walk around talking about, do you know who I am? You walk around with humility. You
Yeah.
walk around with kindness. You walk around so that you can show people that this is how we can live in
Yeah.
this country, David. And you were born and raised here. I was not.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
seen so many people differentiate themselves from the average folk because I was born of this and I was born of that. One of the
Hmm.
reasons why I like you so much is you always turn and say, how can I be
Yeah.
for the people that needs to have something different? So you're
Well,
not
look,
just
it's
moving.
it. Yeah, I have to say, and this is really interesting. And I love this point. Um, the difference between the aristocracy and the bourgeois have worked very hard and extraordinarily quickly to obtain everything they have, and therefore they're very angry about making sure they keep it. Which means there isn't room for you. I can't give you soup from my spoon because I may not have soup, right? But if you're raised in a room in which that's never a truth, you don't really understand that part. Suddenly, abundance isn't an issue, and the issue becomes you are your brother's keeper. It was imparted on me that there was no. I mean, it was annoying. I know when people believe it was great. It was annoying. Also, it had nothing to do with money, right? It had everything to do with passing on of a genetic history, one person after another, imprinted. So you're born and stamped with this stamp that says this is you're branded immediately, and you carry this brand. You have two options: you can sink or you can swim. One of will happen. You either sink and become crazy and nobody loves me. I can't stand myself. My family. I never relate to them. Or you say I have really big shoes to fill and big jewels to put on. I better get a strong neck,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so this forcing, and I want people to hear this forcing because when I post this stuff about my childhood and what it was like, it wasn't fun. It was necessary for who I am today, my Mother's Day is a thankful because I thank her for the things that she did that were necessary to make me me, even when I didn't like them or still to this day disagree with them.
Right.
They have in some way imprinted a truth in me that I cannot get rid of. Is immutable. Um, that truth that there is no such thing as this cash doesn't matter. It comes and goes.
Right.
Your history is here, and so I was raised everywhere I went. I carried history with me on my shoulders. And it wasn't school I had to be fearful of. I attended a school where there was very few black people, if ever there were black people, and I called it pepper and grits, right? I was not afraid of the school. I was afraid of what would happen. And so was the school, afraid of what would happen if my mother had to come to the school. Or if my father, I said, please call my father, don't call my
I would
mother.
love to meet your mother.
Oh
Because
my
my son
goodness.
was sitting beside me in church, and his pastor, while I was preaching about mothers, different kinds of mothering, he turns and looked at me. He said, "Who? We were scared. Even the principals. The
Ooh,
principals will tell you.
scared.
I had to call me to come to the school. To he said, he said, y'all go on ahead and do what you're doing. As for me and my house, I gotta face my mother. That level of thoughtfulness, that level of, and the Spanish teacher said she thought I was abusing my children because they were so fearful. I said, no, they're respectful.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
And just power. I mean, my mother, she was so powerful. She was so powerful, and in a way that was. I tell you, I was in school. This is a funny story. And two things. I was only in trouble twice in school. Both of them ended up in a suspension.
You
The
got
first time,
good.
twice. First time, I was in the fifth grade. And I had gone to this, we had computerized everything. We got all these laptops, and I was on this new program where you could draw with the computer. We were told to recreate a masterpiece from what we'd seen in the books on this computer program. So I did. And I chose Leonardo da Vinci, and I drew everything anatomically correct. And I shut the computer, and the next day they came and they said, you have drawn pornography. And I said, oh, no, not pornography. Now, by the way, by the time I was 5 years old, I knew very well who I was and who I was not. I was not drawing titties because I enjoyed them. Okay, so my mother, they said, we're going to call your mother. I said, don't do that. Don't call her. Call my father. And so they said, no, any child that says don't call the mom, call the father, we need to call the
You
father
go
because
off
he's
right
a
away. Yes.
disciplinarian. Okay, so they call my dad. My dad comes to the school and he says, what's the problem here? And they say, your son has drawn pornography. Pornography. Okay, so let me see what he drew. I'm in the principal's office. And he calls my mother. You're not going to believe this. Come to the school. My mother comes to the school and she looks at the piece and she says, what? This is beautiful. What's the problem with this? And they said, well, he's drawn the vaginal area and it's drawn, and that's not allowed. She says, well, who was he copying? Let me see the original. She says, oh, this is what it's supposed to be. And she said, come on, we're leaving. They said, well, he's suspended. She said, well, that's fine, but we're leaving. And off we went. That's my first suspension. My second suspension was in school playing gym. We had a thing called dodgeball, throw the balls. We had a paraplegic. Now, can you imagine this? In gym, there's a paraplegic laying in the bed, one arm working. And the rules of dodgeball was this one person's on another team. They may hit you with the ball, but you may not hit them or you're out. Right? So in my mind, very quick, I said, well, it's no impossible. We're not going to win. And so I said, how the F-bomb are we supposed to win? Oh, Mr. Jenkins, David Alexander, up you go to the office, file the finders. You're going to be, so off I go. We're going to call your mother. Again, I don't think you need to do that. But there's we're calling your mother. Okay, so here she comes from Prudential. Lisa Rivers was her secretary. She drove her car, her Prudential car, and dropped my mother off, who came into the school looking like Carol. Came into school looking like Miranda Priestley, had that hair, had that sharp, whatever, and the mink. And then she went to the office and she said, what are you doing here in the ice house? Didn't I tell you about use of language and this, that, and the other? And Father Price said, oh, Mrs. Jenkins, I know you're such a woman of rapport. You would never allow your son to this, that, and the other. And she said, well, what did he do? And he explained the story to her about the paraplegic and the ball and that if they hit us, we would lose and be out. And if we hit them, we were going to lose and they would be survived. And she said, well, how the fuck are they supposed to win? And I looked at her, I looked at the spine, and she said, say one word. and we left. So that was my mother, and so when I think about that sort of and also the language and the boldness, I didn't have a moment to, so it was not always just this purity of whatever, but you knew when and how and why. And so I think because I carry that history, I knew that I was walking around with my mommy on my shoulder, with my grandparents, and every generation that ever went through something was on my shoulders. So that I stood here only because somebody else did the work. I say to people who are parents, I have 6 grandchildren, I say to each one of them, please do not force your children to remake the wheel, right? We spend so much time with the spokes making the wheel that in slavery, what we teach other children is how to become slaves. And so today we have a bunch of African Americans walking around who behave as slaves because that's what we knew to teach them. We taught them how to make the wheel again.
I need you to step back a second for me because you
Yes.
said something that made sense. So there are all these groups: Jack and Jill, the Lynx, the Boulay, all of those things. And you said something that struck me because I know so many people in these groups and they fight each other. You said the bourgeois have had to work through their bootstraps to get to where they are, and they fight to keep it. So they keep people out of certain groups, out of certain rooms, out of certain places. People who are naturally born with grace and aristocracy,
You got it.
don't have to go through all of that. They're not wanting to be in those kinds of rooms.
You just have to, are trained not to. Find it grotesque. Find it grotesque. Would never ever be seen looking as grotesque and bougie and namey and this and the others. Now, there is a slight difference between white people and black people in this, in that Africans from Africa have always been a showy and fancy people. So they get dressed and get dressed. Right, so we see that tradition still in African church. We get dressed, put on a hat.
Dandyism, yes.
Yeah, the dandyism is a big thing for us.
Yes.
Not simply because, and this is where people get over this. They say dandy is big because black people weren't allowed to during slavery. No, dandy was a thing because they brought it with them when they came here. So that when women were told their hair was too fabulous in the South and they needed to cover it up, those women began to wrap their hair to the sky, just like they did in Africa, and that became a whole thing. And white women then tried to wrap their hair to the sky. It didn't quite work. What they couldn't fold it. But so we've always had dandyism. So there's a bit of a show-offness already in the African-American diaspora. I will say, however, this idea about bourgeois versus old, and why old and new sometimes are like oil and water, is because old is so restrained. Not because of forcing it, but just that's just, you don't need to. It's here. I don't have to show you. I just am. I walk into the room as my being. I don't need to tell you I'm coming to the room. You know it when I'm here. And if anything, my job while in the room is to find a way to be gracious. Sometimes I miss that. And sometimes when I have been ungracious, it's really, really bad for you because I have a way to put words together that allow you to know that I have chosen to be ungracious. But it's never because I was trained. In fact, it would be appalling to anybody I came from
Yes.
that I was ungracious at any moment in life, and it could get me beaten home whether I was right or wrong,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's a lesson from childhood. I mean, the first time I can recall that lesson, it was a man I absolutely despised that my mother brought to the family to be taken care of. They're always bringing people to be taken care of, and he sat and brought his child, and he was just a very. He came from a world in which children were to be seen and not heard. And he came from a very underprivileged background in which he was forced to take a lot of abuse as a child, and he thought that that was correct. He brought that to the room with him. He wore that on his back, and he introduced that to my cousins and I, who were not used to being treated like anything but mere prince and princess. And so we were sitting at the dining room table, and he picked up the finger bowl and drank from it, and was demanding something of me, and was speaking to me, and I didn't respond. I was silent because I was trained. If I was angry or tired, I would just be silent. And my mother said, "Excuse me, young man, did you hear his name address you?" I said, "I'm so sorry, Mommy, but I'm unable to speak to anyone who drinks from a finger bowl." And she swallowed and she put her spoon down and she said, "Please see me in the solarium." And I got up and I walked out and excused myself from the table. And we used to stand when ladies stood, and there's a reason for that. But we go to the solarium, and she says to me, "I don't ever want to hear you behave this way ever again. I understand you, and I thought it was funny as hell. I know that he annoys you, but I need you to treat him as though he had the dignity of a king when he is here amongst kings, and never ever to treat him like he is less than in front of anyone again. And when you have something like that to say, you come tell mommy later on in nursery." And that was it. And back we went to the table, and back we sat, and I begrudgingly responded to his following request. But that's the type of raising. There was no, we didn't, there weren't severe beatings. We were told to stand still in the middle of the kitchen and be silent. No one would address you. You would be invisible. And so for 3 or 4 hours, we would stand in the middle of the kitchen while all the people worked around and moved around and this and the other, and you could not be addressed. You didn't exist for 4 hours. That was a type of training. Now, if I go to City Hall, I can stand still for 4 hours and make an address to a people using the inertia of that fortitude to speak truth to power without the feeling of consequence, because I didn't grow up with consequence
Right.
from a standpoint of power. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's just they're loving this conversation, and
Oh.
it's one that we need to have. Social
There's
media.
yeah, we were talking, and we wanted to make sure, and I want to make sure we do this because it is
Yes.
so, the drug problem, which is pervasive.
Yes.
And one of the things that you're raised with when you come from an old family is that you are your brother's keeper. The question of, am I my brother's keeper, this biblical question, the answer to it is always yes. And you're raised to know that it is upon which the legs that you stand, that you are gained everything in life that you have. And if it were not for the people that support you, you would be nothing. There would be no you if it weren't for the system of people that you are standing on, whose shoulders you're standing on, whose neck you are standing on. And so you must protect them. If you do not protect the person whose shoulders you're standing on, you too collapse. Okay, fine.
Absolutely.
So we look for solutions to the problem at their beginning, at their origin. We do not look for band-aids. We're not interested in the band-aid. We think it's obscene. So the response that we have from our government about what's happening in Kensington, the response I heard from Councilman Lozada while I was impassioned seemed to me tone deaf. I listened keenly to that address. I was not there. I was actually sitting watching it. I left my address and I was sitting at the Ritz-Carlton watching this on my phone. And I heard her passion, but I felt she missed the moment. See, there was a group of people who were entrenched in a neighborhood for years, who grew their children in their line, who had been moved into that neighborhood from another one called South Philly only 2 generations ago, who found themselves in North Philadelphia put out because they had been given at the time cocaine. We remember that, right? And how that was planted in neighborhoods so that people, developers could come in and buy up the houses and make that fancy again. And then we got temple land and school land and this, that, and the other out of all people's houses we took away from them due to drug problems. We removed access to things. I don't want to forget that we were one of the places where they were testing women and taking away their ability to give birth by poisoning their uteruses, right? That's a thing that happened in the African American community. I don't want to forget that on this Mother's Day week. This same group of people now is facing poverty after poverty and a placement of drugs. We do not ask why the drugs are there. We ask what to do with the drugged up people. Now, I tell you, I'm also from a family where my grandfather ran health and human services for the state of Delaware, where my grandmother was a psychiatrist and a surgeon. So there's a heavy medical thing inside of me. And one of those things said the issue, the problem is that we allow from Lancaster County into Philadelphia this ring of trafficked drug that we do nothing to actually stop it. This thing. And when people are there to help someone, we criminalize the person who is in need of help instead of the thing which has caused them the damage. If you suffer your people to be ill-educated and corrupt their manners from infancy, and then you charge them for the crimes which their first education disposes of them, an English lord says in Parliament, what else is to be concluded but that you have first made the thief, only then to punish it? We have created the thief that sits on the step and punished it because we refuse to take away the things which cause the pain, the destruction, the anger, the death. So when we remove these vehicles of life-saving ability from the street, we have said to the people, you are disposable. And who lobbies for that? The developers. So I want us to ask the question, when we sit in city council and we hear fee simple building, Councilmember Lozada, how many buildings are fee simple to the land bank in your district every Thursday? And
Describe to
what
them what fee simple is.
it is when they take your house back as a city of Philadelphia because you are delinquent in taxes and payments, and the house sits vacant, empty, and it goes back to the land bank in Philadelphia for something to happen to it. It is supposed to go back for a better opportunity for development in the neighborhood. We have 5,000 plus homes in land bank. We have 5,000 plus homeless people in Philadelphia. I cannot imagine there is a direct correlation. Don't ask me if there could be. I want council members out to answer to the people how many homes are fee simpled and gifted back to the land bank in her district, and how many of the people whose homes have been land banked are people who have died of addiction or abuse, who people who are in a drug-like problem, people
We just
who,
lost our video of you, David.
uh-oh,
There you
is
go.
that better?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's better.
It's people who have died of a drug issue, people who people who didn't know how to properly seed their land to their children. How many of those families affected, right, who could also be saved and kept alive, is a entity like a developer coming in, hoping, wishing that this community dies just like it did in North Philadelphia, dies so that they can come to you and say, here's $50,000 for your home and then build Temple University. Dies so that we can gentrify this area too. So when the neighbors complain to you that there are homeless people living on the steps and there is trash in the street that we must step over, I ask them, where did you buy your home that there was not trash the day that you came to get it? And who did you buy your newly developed home from that thought this community should suddenly change over? And what did you do with the people that you displaced to have your joy? Because for me, I am my brother's keeper. I don't have a choice. And if I were bourgeois, I would be concerned about my peace, my joy, my sanctity above the peace, joy, and sanctity of anyone else around me. And so there is this tug of war that the city government must wrestle with. You have been elected to be the brother's keeper, not to be the bourgeois. You've been elected to hold first the sustainability, life, character of your district, of your area, of your constituents. Those constituents in Councilmember Lozada's district not only are people who are moving to the neighborhood to make it better and more wonderful, and I'm sure there is an angst and terrible kind of a gut feeling that happens every day when you wake up in such a district, when you watch people leaning over trying to fit underneath a cart for shelter, right? But it's also that the person trying to squeeze underneath the cart is your constituent. They are the brother you must keep. And so the answer is you build a hospital to put them into. You find a way to rehabilitate them. You don't remove access to medical care. You become the medical care. If it takes 30 streets on every corner in Kensington until the drug problem is gone, that's what you do. And if the neighbor has a problem with that, you moved into Kensington,
Yes.
where this was a pervasive issue. And it doesn't go away overnight because you decided you're sick of seeing it. And as much as you have the lobbying power and the ability to speak beautifully and to come to City Hall and complain about the homeless neighbor on your step and the trash in your front yard, somebody has to say to the council members, no, 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 no. Feed my people, clothe, give shelter, take care of the least of us. Otherwise, there is no such thing as the best of us.
What do you think will ultimately happen in Kensington? Because this has been an issue for a long time, and it is something that we have seen happen before. Right there by the art museum, those high rises were filled with Latino people. They were living a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful life. All of a sudden, there was all this talk about violence and how violent it got, and they moved everybody into the Kensington
That's
area.
right. And the people
And
who
that
are in the
and those
suburbs,
high rises now are filled with people who are paying 1.2, $3.5 million.
and let's not forget who they are. These are the people whose parents made urban flight to the main line, who lived their lives in the suburbs, and when they became empty nesters, needed places to come back to. So what did
Hmm.
they do? They looked at the most beautiful areas of the city and they plopped themselves back down. I cannot forget about the infestation and horrible treatment of the building, which had all sorts of disease running through its pipes, which is now one of the fanciest places you can live right there on the Parkway, Parktown. Parktown was a slum, right? It was a project almost. And it became now this bourgeois community. They never fixed the walls, they never fixed the pipes, they just made it pretty, right? They didn't change anything about the structure of the building. So they still have problems with mold. They still got issues with moisture. They still have things with disease and it's running through the walls, right? Because they never fixed that part. They just made it fancy. What will happen to Kensington, and I shudder to say this, but I think it's true, is that until we care, and I don't know that we do, I don't know, Councilmember Zana, I want you to hear me say this. The focus has to be on, and only on, the drug infested, addicted, sick, ailing citizens in your district. And until the 100% of the focus is on them and not on the people who have moved there to make it better, and until we do something like put sheltering in the community that gives for free people access to sheltering, Medicare, and this, and the other, if by force, fine. You can 302 people who you see to be inappropriate or in the influence for a period of time. If you need to make laws in city governments that focus that the law has to support its sick, and then the well will do their work. Right now, I'm seeing a law that helps to clean up. I love the word clean up.
Yes,
Clean up
yeah.
clean up an area from the people who live there so that it might become beautiful. And that type of karma, that type of karma created, is never going to work. It's never going to work. So I empathize with the duty of being in such a district where that is horrific. It's a horrific task. But the focus from the government, if it is not on the well-being of those with zero or less than or nothing, and gifting them, and I'm so sick of hearing people say, "Well, they need to work for it." If they could work for it, if you wanted
They
them to
would.
work for it, they would. They would have.
Hmm.
Nobody wants these people flipping burgers and handing them French fries. Do you want this
Hmm.
person serving you your meal at the restaurant? Do you want them to ask you if you want fries with that? No, you don't. You want them to far away from them. So give them somewhere to stay. Well, the first thing one needs to rehabilitate any portion of their life is a good night's rest and a hot meal.
And the
Wait, we
people
know
who are
this.
supplying the hot meals are being pushed out.
Told they can't
Um,
anymore. They're not
and
allowed
the
to give people
folks who are
food.
doing the work to help, with the wound care say that she has not asked to meet with them, that they've
Mm.
waited, that, when they heard it was like an hour before, or
I want you to. I want to
and
lean in there.
yeah,
Yeah, that right
because here's
there.
here, here is my issue, and I'll let you lean
Yeah.
in.
Mm.
When you are in public service and people
Mm.
vote you in to do certain things, and I'm not just talking about Ketty Lazard, I'm talking about anyone who is in leadership, and people criticize what they see is an injustice, the right thing to do is not to scream about what people say about you, because really it's not about you, it's about what the people need to make sure that there's healing and healthiness happening there. The right thing to do is to go sit with those people with humility and to say, how can I support you? What the people are saying is, because I have interviewed several of them, is
Mm.
that there is this thing around you. Well, you don't belong here anyway, you're just taking up money, nothing is changing. Drug addicted individuals don't just get better miraculously, right?
No.
Was it Betsy
No.
Ford that was the one that started the Ford Clinic because she was an alcoholic and she got tired of trying to hide? And so they were figuring out ways. The problem is the people who don't seem to have the money are always dispensable. But to your
Betsy
point,
Ford,
karma,
I want to, yeah, put a pin in that because Betsy Ford, remember, she changed once she was on a public White House tour and was found looking tore up. And the public backlash about her state is what allowed a person of privilege to pivot by opening up the Ford Center. Had it not been for her state of clearly alcoholism in public, I don't know that we would have seen the Ford Clinic. People who are poor don't have that privilege, right? So yeah. And on this Mother's Day, where a Philadelphia, in the city of brotherly and love and sisterly affection of Philadelphia, creates a worldwide recognized now day of love, motherly love. Here we put an example in Kensington of anything but motherly love. If your child was sick like this, you would not throw them to the wolves. You would nurse them. Even when society couldn't stand to look at them, you would be with them. And so we have to exercise a motherly like love in Kensington that is not seen in many places, because the truth is it's everybody's problem. It's not just one person's, it's everybody's problem. You are your brother's keeper. And if you don't know that you are your brother's keeper and you sit in a position of power, then you need to get out of your seat. Because the only way you should be there is if you understand your job is a position of love and a position of care for the people who have the
And
least.
service.
Service to those who have the least, not just service to those who have the least. Let me tell you something. There's always going to be a billionaire, a millionaire, a new bourgeois person who's going to build something fabulous and marvelous. And I want you to encourage them to open those things if, in their plan, they have solved the problems of the least in your community. So you want to build this new high-rise on Rittenhouse Square called the Laurel? I think that's fabulous. If you're going to do that, if I were in council, if I was a person in power, I would say to you, you can't do that until you put the funds behind that building to put all the people you displaced from it. You
Yes.
may not build until you put $30 million of your $63 million budget into making sure that some portion of this is clean, green, and energy
Mm-hmm.
effective, and that money there goes funneled back into the communities that need the most help. No, I'm not going to force you to into luxury housing that you can't afford. I'm not going to insist that you go get a job somewhere to be allowed to breathe, sleep, and eat. I'm going to gift you a space in a building that is otherwise empty, because you are a person who deserves dignity and respect. And once you've had that dignity and a night's rest and a hot meal, you can function in society. So you can only focus on the least. This is the thing that was driven into me as a child. This is the thing that was beaten to me when the scarf was tied around the back of my chair. That was told to me when I had to leave the dining room about the way I addressed someone over a finger bowl. It is this idea that the least is to be treated like a king in order for kings to behave as kings. Can't be a king if you don't take care of the people who are charged to you.
A whole freaking word. That is the word. That is the word.
So everybody today, turn on your water. Go tell the water. Tell the water. We need to take care of our people. Find a way to get the message through. Take care of you. Make that your prayer. Abundance. There is no such thing as a lack of abundance. There's a lack of ability to turn off the part of our brain that forces a supply of famine, that forces this supply of lack into a pervasive understanding of the world. We don't have lack.
So
So
that we
what I
can
want
differentiate people in society. It is the
give them.
evil thing to do.
People will differentiate themselves. You don't have to worry about the part where you're governing. They'll do that on their own. But see, the thing about old aristocratic thought process, and it comes from feudalism. Feudalism is seen as a dirty and ugly thing, but I need to understand feudalism meant that there was a person who owned the land who was forced to take care of everybody who worked that land, lived on that land, cared for that land, because they realized their crop needed to be tended to. And without the people healthy, without them this and the other doing the crop, so the feudal lords, if you will, who were good lords, realized their job was to tend to the people just as much as they would have tended to a great crop. And so I want us to change what we think about that. So if you're born with that type of a history, you recognize that everything about your day is making sure that the system that keeps that day moving is as happy as a pig in fat
Absolutely.
for the best crop. But if you
Absolutely.
damage the system, you damage the crop.
Yes.
So today, the Trumpers find out that they don't have toilet paper to wipe their behinds with because they sent the people who packed the toilet paper away.
Mm-hmm.
This is the system failing. This is what happens when you don't pay attention to the least of these. So if there's anything we can do, we can say to the least of these. And I think if we walk through that on this Mother's Day, if we look and lean into that, what would it be like for me to behave as a mother to the people that I see that I don't know, that I don't care about, that I don't understand? What if I behave like a mom? What would happen? What would this world be
What would
like?
indeed, indeed. David, people are saying that this was a great conversation, that they could listen to this all day long. And in a time, someone asked me the other day, why aren't you covering politics and all that? I said, I need to talk about the things that absolutely matter to us so we can be better. Those human interest stories that allow people to see each other versus, oh my God, they're such a pain and they're over here doing this, and the immigrants are taking this, and the
You're
poor
so
people
right.
are doing that.
Because if we focus on the human, like if we could do this, right? If we actually walked through the world thinking what it would be like as a mother, politics would not exist. You wouldn't need politicians. You wouldn't have to do because the people would be so overwhelmingly clear about the
Yeah.
light and the path and what is the right thing to do right now to move
Hmm.
forward into the future. You would never have to worry about a politician.
Yes.
Nobody would ever have to create a law to be good. But
Hmm.
we haven't been taught that. You see, you go to an African village and they take care of themselves, and there's a happier people, and there's a more communal sense, and they don't need to lean on the law so much because they've been trained in their DNA to behave in a particular way. We
Yes.
need to train
Yes.
ourselves in our DNA and our children, everything else, to behave as though our brother is, and we are their keeper. Yeah.
And how are the children?
Oh.
The question is,
Mm,
how are the children?
yeah.
I am so happy. I'm so happy. I have an hour on here, and so that just ended. Oh, Rosin said this show was thought provoking and powerful. Let me see. Uh, Two said, David, you're preaching and teaching this morning. I could listen to him all day. Like, this is great. And someone laughed and said, the paper bag folks, you have to be a certain ilk, a certain light. And they
That's
don't
right.
realize they're really not bourgeois when they're separating themselves as Jack and Jill and the Lynx and the Boulay, that it's really showing folks that, if you're not taking care of everybody, and they give
Yeah.
these service
Well,
projects, we have
that
these service
history.
projects that we're doing.
That history is hard. It's a complicated one because the original form was to say if you could be a Jack and Jill, it was because you had white ancestry in you. You were light enough, right? And that understanding was not simply just because of segregation and racism, but also because of survival, right? If you weren't
Hmm.
passing, you didn't survive. And so if you weren't wealthy and you weren't passing, the way that which you could edify yourself is to dream that one day your baby would be white because then he would survive. So there's an ugly history that we've taught in there. I was just at the Viennese Opera Ball in New York, which is a debutante
Hmm.
presentation, and I always grapple with the truth of the debutante situation, which is to put like-minded individuals together for marriage. I mean, we can't get past that, right? And the history of that long presentation, but also what that meant in black circles, the black debutante balls, and this that happened, which again was not about becoming white or equating ourselves with it. It was about our own societal ladder of who is who and who
Yes.
is not. It was about marrying like individual African Americans of
Yes.
power and influence together. So this system exists and it is pervasive in this country. We shouldn't try to get around it or say it's not. And a lot of the history and the traditions are beautiful
Hmm.
and grand and respected. But we should be honest about where they come from and who they are and why they happen so that we can celebrate them correctly. So
Yeah.
I know that the Jack and Jills is a hard thing. It's a lot of, not girls, but Jack and Jills. And a lot of people go to sorority group, they become this and the other. It's about a
Yeah.
place of belonging. But I need you to hear the history, which was that if you were a dark member of your own family, you were enslaved. And if you were light enough, you could be freed and you could own your family members, right? That's a real story. And that your children, if they were light, could be privileged and have land and be granted things, and they could become masons and they could become grandmasters who could also purchase the freedom of their family, right? This was a method of protection amongst black people. Black people sat in the halls of Congress before Jim Crow ever came to be,
Absolutely. In the
right? So this
1890s. Yep.
this understanding of who. So today, Habenas Papa, we got a black pope, right? Y'all wished it, this, and the other. And according to American laws, one drop, he got several. And so and so we see somebody who has an understanding in their history of the immigrant, the
Yes.
degraded. His family had to change their racial identity to survive. So he
Hmm.
looks right and mighty, white and bright, standing
Oh,
up there, and though he look real bright, but let
and
me
his
tell you,
brother
he's
says, well, we do not identify
where
as
to
black.
identify. You don't have to give me a little bit of that blood. Give me a prick. Right. And the thing, we don't need you to identify, baby. We see you before. Pass it. Got it. What I do know is that when you are forced to confront your truth in public, all of a sudden your behavior shifts a little bit. You walk slightly different. You waddle with less of a step. And so I know that today, in a time that asks us to speak truth to power, to love deeply, to lean into things that are good when everything else around us looks bad, that there's this opportunity for this pontiff, there's this opportunity for this community, there's an opportunity for African Americans to go back and reassess the pain and wounds they created for themselves and embrace each other. That doesn't mean you have to like it. I'm not saying like everybody. I'm saying take care of everybody. There's a
There
difference.
you go. There you go.
Yeah, it
This
is.
conversation was amazing. We'll do more of
So
these in the
like,
upcoming Mondays because I feel like
yeah.
wake up, wake up. This
Happy
episode of
Monday.
thank you, Daddy. This episode of Mornings with Mother is officially over. I am Andrea Lawful Sanders. I'll see you when I see you. Bye, everybody. Bye, baby. Bye,
Bye.
bye. Bye, darlings. Ah.